Minister, will you clearly outline to the Dáil the reason you have referred the Industrial Relations provisions in respect of pension entitlements of retired workers Bill 2021 to the Department of Social Protection, despite it being within your remit? And just to restate, the purpose of that bill, which came before this House for second stage in June 2021, was to give retired workers a voice and representation in matters that affect their pensions.
I greatly appreciate the opportunity to address this question. Deputy, in April, when Minister Coveney and myself met with you and representatives to discuss your proposed bill, the representatives of various retired persons associations expressed their concerns about the protections in place for people who are already in receipt of pensions. At that meeting, I was informed that these representatives had not yet had any contact with the Department of Social Protection, which has policy responsibility for the pensions policy. Therefore, Minister Coveney contacted Minister Heather Humphreys in relation to the pensions issues raised at the meeting, and then wrote to Minister Humphreys and requested that our officials consider arranging a meeting on this. Given that this is between your group and Minister Humphreys, I am unsure whether this meeting has taken place. As regards your proposed bill, I would like to be clear that I did not refer to the Department of Social Protection. In any case, it remains my view, and indeed the Department's view, as was discussed at our meeting, that the bill is fundamentally misconceived in that it is proposed that in addition to employers and workers, a third category of retired persons would have access to industrial relations bodies. Our policy is clear that industrial relations are a matter for people that are active in the workplace. I am not aware of any other country where retired persons have access to industrial relations bodies. But just to underline, Deputy, this hasn't been referred to the Department of Social Protection, merely they were brought into the conversation.
Well, I don't know what they brought into the conversation actually means, and I did ask you at the outset to explain clearly what's going on. I received a letter to say that Minister Humphreys has been asked to look at this from your department. Look, you said both to me and to retired workers when we met you, and it was clear that you don't have a rational objection to the core principle in this bill. And here in the Dáil, or a committee stage, were you able to answer compelling cases made by the retired workers for this bill? In the 2 years since it's been debated, you've not produced a single alternative proposal as you said you would. We had a public consultation which overwhelmingly favoured the passing of the bill into law, and nothing was done. You and Minister Coveney met the workers and promised to produce a proposal. Nothing's been done, essentially for 2 years. You're listening to the employers' organisations and to senior civil service who've advised you to stonewall, delay, kick to touch, and nothing is done. And all the while, your backbench TDs who are being lobbied on this tell those retired workers' representatives and the 500,000 people that they represent that they actually agree with the principle of the bill. Can you please explain?
Yeah, a couple of things there, Cahirlick. Firstly, Deputy, as you know, and as we've had this in the last number of times that this has been brought up, it is the matter for you if you want to progress this specific bill. And the Joint Committee of Enterprise, Trade and Employment met in public session back in January to discuss detailed scrutiny of this bill. Following the meeting, our department issued a detailed brief to the committee as requested, and nothing further has come from the committee. We did not commit to produce an alternative in that meeting, and I'm sure the minutes of that meeting and records would show that. We said we'd look into the matter and that we'd engage with the Department of Social Protection as was laid out by the workers in that engagement. Our concerns with this bill, Deputy, are quite clear and have been stated active. The trade union movement aren't looking for this to come in. Bringing in retired people to negotiate terms is not something that's done in any other jurisdiction, and it's not something that we in this government are prepared to support. And that's the matter of the fact, Deputy. And as I said, it is appropriate for the Department of Social Protection, as per the conversation of that meeting, to be asked for their opinion. I don't know, can you tell me if that meeting has taken place, or have the representatives engaged with you to say that they have arranged such a meeting?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you're giving a very inaccurate reflection of the contents of that meeting. Those workers who met you, those retired workers, represent 500,000 pensioners in this state, people who've worked in the civil service, the public sector, and who've built up this state. And as happened to them in the past, their pension pot has been used to negotiate changes to that pension pot for the benefit of the employers and unions. The trade union movement is not objecting to this bill passing the stages. This bill is eminently sensible and belongs in your department. It is called an amendment to the Industrial Relations Act, not an amendment to social protection. So there is absolutely no coherent reason why you would pass it to Heather Humphreys to deal with. When we passed it here at second stage, your government amended it to say it shall be read a second time within a year, which would have brought us to June 2022. It is now October 2023. People get older, their pension pot get less, and all the while a simple amendment is needed to something which now gives them a right to go to the WRC within 6 months of retirement. All this bill is doing is extending that to cover any period where their pension may be interfered with, and to give them a voice and to have a say in what goes on. Not to put up pickets or to demand an end to this, that and the other industrial relations, to give them a voice.
Deputy, I'm going to underline, this hasn't been kicked to the Department of Social Protection. You've made that accusation now a second time, and I clearly have said it hasn't. But we're dealing with a pensions issue. Yes, this is, of course, under the remit of the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, and your bill is, of course, an amendment to the Industrial Relations Act. But when it comes down to pensions, it's only sensible to engage the Department of Social Protection, as was discussed at that meeting, and which the workers' representatives or retired persons' representatives that you brought in agreed was a sensible option. I don't know if that meeting has taken place. I would encourage it to take place and encourage those representations. Deputy, I am completely sympathetic and empathetic to the case that has been put before us, but I'm also aware of very clear the industrial relations negotiating mechanisms that we have in this state. If you believe this bill is absolutely in its entirety is exactly what needs progressed, it is well within your remit to progress it through this House. That is your responsibility, which we've said to you in oral parliamentary questions and on questions of promised legislation at least 3, if not 4 times since I've come into this office. We will, of course, continue to keep an open mind and look at these as widely as possible, but I fundamentally believe involving Minister Humphreys in this is sensible when we're dealing with pensions, but it hasn't been referred to her in any way.
It's kick for touch. It is really kick for touch. You amended it to stop it being passed that day.